Hi everybody, Bob Ogilvy, Project Manager and Professional Coach. So today's topic, today's need is around, so the last video was how do you develop a manager, and this one is around how do you develop a leader, or how do you develop these leadership skills, or you could frame them as executive skills. So a lot of, I'll go back to first of all the talent triangle. Again, I really like PMI, Project Management Institute's talent triangle, because it says, yes, there are technical, analytic, particular framework skills, but there's also leadership skills, and there's also these strategy, business acumen skills, and you need the whole piece of the puzzle to make this make sense. So in the context of leadership development, what this means is that as much as someone might want to start in the leadership end of things earlier on in their career, it really makes more sense later on when you have more of these other pieces in play. You're going to start with developing some technical skills, and then you have learned some business acumen, and you're developing some leadership over time. Or maybe you're probably going to start with technical, and then maybe you're developing some of the leadership and now the strategy and the acumen skills. So in this context, you could see how the people orientation of how they're framing leadership in the triangle and the strategy orientation, as much as they're different in the triangle, as we're dealing with them here, they're kind of similar because they're about what your organization needs. And the people question is an internal question around how do you handle your people, what kind of culture do you want to create, what are the KPIs you want to be looking at in terms of producing change. And the external question is this differentiation, competitive advantage, probably innovation type question, right? One of the reasons they use, so I guess why don't we talk about scorecards at this point? There's something called scorecards, or I guess one particular one is balanced scorecards. There's different scorecards you can use though, right? And the classic balanced scorecard has 4 areas. So normally if you think of accounting, it's used to dealing with just the financial numbers, right? How profitable or unprofitable is a business, right? But because that is so inept at looking at the causes of why that is the case, they developed better systems to help draw your attention to the right places. So the other good thing about this is it starts to deal with the causality of why one thing might cause a certain result or vice versa. You get upstream, downstream events and causes and effects of those, right? So financial is really the most downstream one, right? It's the most derivative. You don't just wave a magic wand and say, boop, I want more money. Well, do you want more money because you want to sell more units, or do you want more money because you want to manage internal expenses and reduce turnover, or do you want more money because you want to produce competitive advantage and innovate better? Those are all very different things. Okay. And that's what the scorecard is about. So in addition to the financial end of things, there's one which is about it's your internal, something like internal staff. I can't remember exactly the way they're framing that. There's another one that is dealing with competitive organization. Sorry, I think the furthest most downstream one is around innovation and change. That's your capacity for change and how able you are to continue to renew yourself with those. It's not supposed to be dealing with efficiency. And then one step down from that is dealing with efficiency and these kind of organizational factors. The second to last one, but still before the financial, would be the people, the processes, the talent operations, and then eventually getting the financial, something like that. There's different scorecards for different things, but they're about drawing attention to different areas. Another good thing about scorecards is that they're broad level and they're inverted, so that it's not like you're looking at how high the scores are. You're actually looking at how low, how negative the scores are. I've seen one where it'll use kind of like a 3 light system: green light, yellow light, red light, right? The point being that you're, as the leader, high level, you're trying to look for these red lights, right? You might be looking at 50 or 100 different KPIs, and your question isn't, how high the scores are. It's which are the top 5 issues should I be paying attention to? Which ones are priority, right? And those are going to become the areas you want to focus effort on, and you're going to want to figure out what those KPIs are and put effort into changing them as you need to deal with them. Anyway, so that's one high-level way to start thinking about your organization, analyzing what's going on. Some other things we should probably touch on in this: change management. Some of you may have heard of Kotter's 8 steps of change management. I've heard another one too where they throw in a 9th step. They break it into 3 clusters of 3. That's useful as well. That's some great stuff. And broadly speaking, it deals with first of all, how you might notice that there is a need for change, some symptoms, how you get the right people together to get like a pilot project, some early easy win going on, and then how you can then leverage that to say, and then now let's scale this into something with more impact. That's important, particularly because it's a really nice kind of link between project management and how you would run some innovative project, but also all the stakeholder management stuff. The change management stuff is so people oriented. And that's really what being a good leader is ultimately about, or being an effective leader in this context is about. It's about being able to lead change, and in that sense, being able to persuade someone of that has strategic undertones. It's not just, I mean, for some people it might just be arbitrarily, here's the direction I set, and I'm the leader, and I say go this direction. But it's much more compelling and leverages more expert power if it has a strategic undertone to it. We believe in this, therefore we're in this direction. Here's what's going on in the market. Here's what I think can save us. Here's why I think it's a strong idea. And if we're going to get there, here's what we need to organizationally change. If you think of in the past, 5 years, when the recent CEO of Microsoft, what's his name, Nadella, I got his name wrong, I'm sorry. But he really did turn around Microsoft in a rather good amount of time. But he had to, cut out a lot of areas they weren't going to focus on anymore. Say this is the new direction of the way things are going. He did a very good job turning that around. So he really needed to think about strategy, figure out what I needed to do, and then it was about how do you execute on that. In that sense, it's in that concept way no different than, let's say, a project manager, except for you're dealing with a longer span of time and a portfolio of many things, right? So a project might proceed saying, okay, so what's my need? Okay, I have this strategic need. Okay, how many resources do I think I might need to allocate in this? And going through and doing it and get it done and hopefully achieve the end, right? But this is like a macro version of that where it's like, what does my organization need? Oh, I think my organization needs that. I've analyzed and figured out what I need to do. Okay, well now we need to change all these things to move towards that. That's at the org level. At the individual level, there's a culture quality. What do people feel and embody? This is where you start to get into topics of engagement. How satisfied are people at work? How happy are people at work? How healthy are people at work? How ill do they get? Absenteeism, a ton of different issues. What's your turnover like? Those can all be kind of indicators of culture and engagement. Mental fitness and organizational fitness are now topics that people are getting into, and engagement becomes a really great way to do that because once you realize that someone being naturally healthy and fit and engaged also means them not just being more productive but creating a better culture, you realize how much you want these. And on the flip side, realizing how much value the good people add, but particularly knowing how much bad the bad people. So this is you sometimes call these people toxic employees. So when you're researching this, you're researching toxicity. They can have quite a bad effect. So mitigating the bad effect of high toxicity employees, that is a very real thing for leaders, right? In the context of change management, this often might come out in terms of, let's say if you kind of break people up into quartiles, right? You have your kind of early adopters, you have your middle 50% majority, and you have your late adopters, right? And when you go through big eras of change, yeah, there could be some chunk of people which jump off board. Case in point, so some of you may have heard me mentioning about holacracy and self-organizing organizations. So Zappos was one big company that jumped on board with that, and they were, I'm trying to remember. For some reason, I want to say they were. I keep thinking 600, so I don't know if we're dealing with 6,000 or 600, but they were. I thought they were over 1,000. Maybe I was wrong. Let's just assume they were 600. They were a large organization. They decided they'd been dealing with it and dealing with the consulting and dealing with some of the practice for a while, and they said, full boat, no, we're going to jump into holacracy. The whole organization is doing this. It's not just one product or silo. Everyone's doing this. It's non-optional. And they were then paying people to leave beforehand, saying, if you don't want this, you can leave. And yeah, they lost, I think it was 30%. No, it wasn't 30%. I think it was 15% of their staff, which, I mean, if you think about the figures of it, is probably actually pretty low, and they're much better off because of it. So they figured out what they needed to do. They came up with the management thing, and even so, yeah, 85% kept going, 15% said it wasn't for me. that's an important thing as a leader to know, because that starts to implicitly get into the efficiency of where should I be placing my time and effort, and is it worth trying to get these last 15%, or is there other good things I could focus on? One of the presidents, I think it was it FDR? Um, Became as much as he was already very well liked, became obsessed with his likability rating, right? And even when he was in the mid high 90s, that wasn't good enough for him. And that would be one quality a leader would work on, to say, despite all the good things I do, despite that I could think about doing more, um, there's a quality of contentment and acceptance. You could frame it as maybe a humility or practicality, or maybe even like a levity quality that they can deal with that, as opposed to, at some point, it probably doesn't behoove you to become so neurotic that you say, 93%, 93% approval, that's not enough. I need 100% approval. Um, that's kind of tyrannical. And it's probably also just inefficient. Is there something you could do to improve it to 99%? Maybe, hopefully. Is it efficient? Is it worth getting that last 6%? Probably not. Um, Once you start understanding what the norms are, you get a better sense of where you're at, what's a reasonable ask, what's a good stretch goal, and what is just out to lunch. The more you work with the KPIs and the numbers, whether we're dealing with a particular project, or in this case, we'd be talking about change leadership, so scorecards and things like that, you'll get a sense of what's realistic, and that's actually very, very healthy. Um, Setting unrealistic goals individually or organizationally um, is bad. It's not this stretch, dream for the moonshot kind of stuff. It could be very demoralizing. So don't succumb to that kind of crazy lopsidedness, the thinking that is somehow bringing out excellence in people. Um, if you are dealing with excellence, that is going to come more back to the strengths and passion stuff, and finding an area where they can individually use their strength to help them individually reach a flow state, and then culturally that boosts engagement by helping more people collectively have those flow states more often. That's the closest thing you're going to get to improvement at that level. And really, when we're talking about approval ratings, that's a very external kind of quality, right? It's like, what do you think of this person or that person? And the heart of work, the heart of doing something and using our skills, is more of an inside out. Not just what am I good at and am I using it, but it's the experiential getting lost and absorbed and challenged and into that work. That's actually what we want. Um, Once we realize there are things we can do to make that happen, all the better. There is nothing like the peak experience of a flow state. That's actually what we are all experientially craving. So when you can craft a culture where that is ever more likely, where that is highly conducive to flow states, magic. It's magic. That's when we're talking about workplace engagement. That's what we're talking about. How do we get more and more people in flow at their work? Anyway, that's a huge topic, and we're not going to address that in a 13-minute video. I'm Bobby Ogilvy, Project Manager Professional Coach. I hope you learned something. I'll talk to you guys soon.